House of the Dragon, Episode 5, We Light the Way. This was an excellent episode, and this review is probably going to be a little longer than the rest because there is so much to unpack. I mean, the first half had a lot going on, and then we have the whole second half, which is the entire wedding, which was dynamic. So let's start from the very beginning. We see that we are in Vale, and we finally meet Lady Rhea, who is Daemon's wife. We've heard reference to her. We get the sense that Daemon does not like her. He has all these disparaging comments about her, and we finally meet her. Unfortunately, she's only around for a couple of minutes because he gets rid of her pretty soon. So it starts, she's out riding, doing a little bit of hunting. Daemon rolls up looking like a Jedi with the hood. And I'm starting to learn that whenever he shows up with that hood, well, it's always bad news when he shows up, but the hood is an ominous prelude of what he's about to do. They see each other. She's talking shit to him, telling him, she's heard word on the street and that he was passed up for his niece and, just taking jabs at him, asking him what his next move is. And then she starts to realize that he's there to do her harm. She goes to pull for her weapon. It's a little too late. She gets knocked off her horse, and it looks like she has some kind of injury where she can't move. Maybe some type of, well, they say later that she had damage to her spine, but she's unable to move. Daemon walks over her and he steps on her wrist, and he doesn't even really, I don't even think he says anything in this whole scene, which is, we're starting to see as a regular thing with him. Like, this actor is so good, and I guess the writing is so good that he doesn't even have to speak. I mean, his presence and his movement just speak volumes. So he's standing over her, he turns around to walk away, and she decides to throw one last jab. And this was ultimately her undoing. And I wonder if he would have killed her if she had not said anything. I mean, it seems like she strikes a nerve with him. He picks up a rock. They don't show it, but apparently he bludgeons her to death in a way that it looks like an accident, because later we're going to hear that word on the street is that she fell from the horse and she broke her neck and her spine, but he clearly killed her. And if his intention wasn't to kill her, I'm curious to know why he was there, because he didn't really say anything. And I know he doesn't want to be married to her, and I don't think that was there asking for a divorce or anything of the sort. It seemed like he was there to do her harm. So I'm not really sure why he walked away after she fell off the horse, and maybe he thought she would die on her own. I'm not sure. But anyway, that was the end of Lady Rhea. She came in real quick and she went out real quick. Next up, we see that Otto Hightower is leaving King's Landing. Last episode, he was fired, and he's returning to Old Town. But before he leaves, he and his daughter have a conversation. She's sad to see him go. You see she's crying, she's upset. Although her and her father's relationship probably had some issues. He did kind of coerce her into marrying the king, and we know that that's not really a happy life for her, but it's her father. She loves him. And before he leaves, he tells her that the king is going to die, sooner or later, and Rhaenyra will not be accepted by the realm. So Alicent needs to get Aegon ready to rule. She's still in a place where she is loyal to Rhaenyra. She's still believing that believing Rhaenyra when she said that nothing happened, and believing that whoever told her father this information was wrong. And him being fired as a result is unfortunate, but she still stands by her decision to protect and to speak up for Rhaenyra. He lets her know that, listen, when Viserys dies, there's gonna be a war, because the realm will not accept Rhaenyra, and the only way she'll be able to secure her throne is by killing Alicent's children. Now, is that a bit extreme? Maybe not so much in the Game of Thrones world, but but it was horrifying for Alicent. You could see the reaction on her face. I mean, that's nothing that she had ever even imagined, and she's clearly conflicted, because she does, I think, feel somewhat responsible for her father's banishment. but I also think she strongly believes in her friendship with Rhaenyra and thinks that she was doing the right thing. So it's a sad moment when he leaves, and you can tell that for somebody who's not been very emotional and affectionate, this is probably the closest he's gotten to it. And his last words to her is that she either needs to prepare Aegon to rule, or she needs to beg Rhaenyra for mercy. And she needs to cleave to Rhaenyra and get on her good side because something is going to happen. There's definitely some dissension in the air, and he wants his daughter and his grandchildren to be safe. Later, we see Alicent in the garden, and Lord Larys rolls up on her. Now, Lord Larys, we have seen, is a bit of a gossip. He has a disability which prevents him from being a soldier. And I think, he's kind of figured out where his strength is and where he can fit in and add value. And it's really just kind of being a gossip. We saw him before at the tournament. He was sitting with the ladies and listening to the rumors, and it seems like this is his role. And he starts a mess. He meets up with Alicent, and he tries to innocently ask her if the princess is feeling better. And Alicent's like, "What are you talking about?" And he's like, "Well, I heard that the maester brought her some tea and it came directly from the king. So I'm just curious to know." I mean, it was just such an obvious attempt to plant some seeds of doubt. I might have missed something. I'm not sure what his intention is. I don't know if he just wants to be messy, or if he truly has like an axe to grind with Rhaenyra and Viserys. I don't really know why he's doing this, but it's success. It works because Alicent starts to wonder. Now she puts on her game face and she tries to pretend as if she's unfazed and she's not shocked by anything he's told her, but she is. She starts to put the pieces together, and her next thing is wondering if, in fact, something actually did happen with Rhaenyra and Daemon. I mean, when he mentions the tea, she seems to know what that implies. So apparently, that tea was common back then, or people knew about the tea, like the Plan B tea or whatever. And she is realizing that she might have been duped, that Rhaenyra may have lied to her. And, this is on the heels of her conversation with her father. So Alicent is in a place right now where she's really questioning everything that she knows or she believes. And we're going to see later on how this kind of plays out in the episode in her relationships with both the king and his daughter. Now, while Lord Larys is in the garden throwing shame on Rhaenyra's name, Rhaenyra is on her way to Driftmark with her father. So remember in the last episode that Viserys told her that she's going to marry Lord Laenor, and that's the end of that. She wrapped her mind around it. I think she is realizing that she can play. She's recognizing the power of manipulation and how she can get everything that she wants simultaneously. She recognizes at this point that she has to play along and she has to give her father his way, but she's also going to make it work for her. And she agrees to this marriage, and we see all of them. We see Viserys, Rhaenyra, Sir Criston Cole, the new hand, Sir Lionel, all heading to Driftmark. And they're on the boat, and Viserys is not doing well. I mean, we know he's been sickly since episode 1, and this episode, it seems like it's really just his health is declining rapidly, and he's having seasickness on the ship. They get to Driftmark, and Lord Corlys is not there to greet him, which is common practice of the time. I mean, the king comes to see you, it's a big deal. Folks roll out the red carpet, all of that. And definitely, at the bare minimum, they would be there to greet them. But Corlys is not there. And we know Corlys is still carrying a grudge from the time that Viserys refused to marry his daughter. And, it was evident when they had that success in the Stepstones that he never returned to King's Landing. He went back to High Tide. So we're seeing there's still remnants of this. And, this also was a scene in which we realized how Viserys is losing his power and his respect. The new hand made a point of mentioning that when Lord Corlys's children came out and they're saying, "Well, my father just came back from a trip. He's ready to greet you." And the hand made a point of saying that, it's disrespectful. But Viserys, I believe, is just defeated at this point. He's like, let's just get on with it. Like, I don't have time for this. But he sees it and he recognizes it because this normally would not be the circumstances upon which he would be greeted. They get inside, and Lord Corlys and his wife, Rhaenys, who is also King Viserys' cousin, greet him, and it seems like all is well. Viserys gets straight to business, and he tells Corlys that he is proposing a marriage between his daughter Rhaenyra and their firstborn son, Sir Laenor. Lord Corlys doesn't seem to show a lot of excitement. I mean, he receives it. I think he's also realizing that the fact that the king has come to him puts him in a little bit of a power position. He's recognizing that some of the dynamics have shifted. But this is an advantageous thing for him. I mean, his son would be king consort. King consort. I mean, it is an honor, and it would ensure power for his family. Perhaps not in the way he had anticipated with his daughter, but it's a good alternative. But before he accepts, he tells Viserys that he has a question about the details, and that is about the surname. So, in I guess in our modern culture and in Westerosi culture, when a man and woman get married, the woman would take the man's name, and so he asks him like, how would this work? I was happy that Viserys stood his ground on this because we've seen him start to shrink week by week, and this was an instance where he definitely stood his ground and let him know, yes, their children will carry their father's last name. However, when they ascend to the throne, they will ascend to the throne as Targaryens because the Targaryens will rule for several hundred more years. He makes that very clear to him. I guess it was it was a compromise, but he did not back down. He didn't even consider it. And I absolutely understand. I mean, this is his dynasty. He cannot let it fall apart. He makes a really good point. I mean, he has went out on a limb here by making Rhaenyra his heir, and setting a precedent for a reality in which women could rule in and of their own name. And you would think that Lord Corlys would understand and appreciate it because that was the scenario with Rhaenys. Had Rhaenys been named heir instead of Viserys, then Lord Corlys would have been the king consort. And he truly wanted that for his wife. So it makes sense that he would not be offended by or push back with what Viserys proposes. Because in essence, that would have been the scenario with him if things had gone differently. So they agree, the compromise works. And later we see a really good scene with Corlys and Rhaenys. And I have to say, I really like their relationship. They seem to truly be in love, which is rare for this time. And it seems like it's a balanced relationship in which they honor each other and respect each other's opinions. And they have an honest conversation. Lord Corlys seems to be excited about this. I mean, this is a power move for his family. But Rhaenys sees it a little bit differently. She knows that Rhaenyra will be challenged. I mean, she's been in Rhaenyra's shoes, so she knows that this is likely not going to go smoothly. And as a result, Rhaenyra and Laenor's children will ultimately be challenged. I mean, they could never make it to the throne if Rhaenyra never makes it to the throne or doesn't last on the throne. And this could spark a war. And if a war does happen, I mean, there is going to be bloodshed. And Rhaenys has a valid concern about her son, and their grandchildren. You know, Corlys has a different opinion. He tells her these are the two most powerful houses. You know, we control the seas and we control half the dragons, and anybody who tries to stand against us will be dealt with. And it's a great attitude, but how realistic is it? And Rhaenys tells him that, you know, at what cost will we go into battle and war just to have our son quote unquote on the throne, or to have our grandchildren on the throne. So she's trying to throw a little bit of a rationale into this scenario and just forewarning him of what could possibly come, and possibly foreshadowing for what is going to happen later on when we see the Dance of the Dragons. Next, we see the betrothed couple walking out on the beach. And remember, they're cousins, so they grew up together. They're very familiar with each other. And they have a really interesting conversation. You know, Rhaenyra is a little different now. She's evolved from this bratty young girl who really was trying to do things her way to recognizing that she can still have her way, but she has to work within the system. And she has a conversation with her cousin in which she acknowledges that he's gay. She knows this. They talk about it in different ways. They talk about preferences and a taste for duck versus geese. A clever way of addressing the elephant in the room. And what she proposes to him is, hey, listen, I know you don't like women. Um, I don't want you like that. I got something else going on. I'm happy for you to do what you want to do. We just have to fulfill our duties, which I'm sure she means to get married and to have children. And beyond that, we can do what we want. We can live separate lives. So it sounds like she's proposing to him an open relationship. And he receives it. I think he's a little relieved to know that she's aware of his circumstances and that, there's not going to be any pressure for him to be somebody he's not. And to be honest, this was probably the best case scenario for him, probably both of them, but for definitely for him. I mean, he would have had to get married at some point. That was a given. And the fact that he's able to marry somebody who understands and will allow him to live his life is a relief, I'm sure. Another interesting thing is that his parents know he's gay. In a conversation that we see with Rhaenys and Corlys, Rhaenys brings up the fact that, he doesn't like women, and Corlys he seems perturbed by this, but he says, oh, I thought he would grow out of it. But they also recognize that their son is a homosexual, and they seem to accept it, which is shocking to me for the time. It would seem like, especially Corlys, he seems very, very traditional alpha male, and the fact that his only and oldest son is gay, I would think it would have bothered him more than it did. But I guess he has an evolved way of thinking, or truly he was hoping that eventually he would grow out of it. We also meet Laenor's lover, his boyfriend, Joffrey, who is, I assume he lives at Driftmark, and he is a soldier of some sort. And they have this relationship in which, they both recognize, because of, well, I guess in this time, gay marriage wasn't a thing, or gay relationships weren't a thing. They did know that this day was coming. And when Laenor tells him that he and Rhaenyra spoke, and she knows what's up, and she's basically giving him a green light to do what he wants, Joffrey is happy to hear this, because now he knows that he doesn't necessarily have to sneak around, and that, his boyfriend is still his, and he's not going to lose him. And he thinks it's also, and he believes it's a good thing, because now he's going to be the king consort, and he knows that there's a lot of power and privilege that comes with this. So for him, this is a really good scenario as well. So right now, it's looking good for everybody. Things are looking like they're starting to fall into place, at least for these folks. And it's going to go horribly left later on. But at the time, there's some hope that this can work out for all of the parties involved. This relationship between Joffrey and Laenor reminded me of the relationship between Renly and Marjorie's brother from House Tyrell. I can't remember his name, but we'll remember Renly, who was Robert Baratheon's little brother. He was gay, and he had a relationship with a man, and it was secret, but because of the proximity they were able to have with each other, they were able to have a relationship. So this is what this gave me. That's immediately what I thought about when I saw this scene. Up to this point, it looked like Rhaenyra was winning, like she had it all figured out and the stars had aligned. However, Sir Criston Cole throws a monkey wrench in her program. On their way back to King's Landing, he professes his love for her. He tells her that, he loves her. He wants to marry her. He recognizes, or she's been telling him, that she doesn't want any part of this life and the inheritance and all of her duty, and that this is a perfect opportunity for the two of them to run away. They can go to Essos and start over, live anonymously, get married, and none would be the wiser. He's feeling horrible about the fact that he broke his oath. White cloaks have to take an oath of chastity, and he broke that when he had sex with Rhaenyra. So he's believing that, he can rectify this if the two of them can just be together, and he truly loves her. He shoots his shot. Rhaenyra is not hearing it. She tells him that the Iron Throne is bigger than her. She has a duty, she has a responsibility. Rhaenyra is hung up on being queen. She wants this, and she's not going to let a fling get in the way of that. I don't believe she loves him. I believe, he was convenient when she had nobody and she was going through her rebellious, depressive stage, her rebellious, angry stage. He was there. He was a confidant. He's there, somebody with her all the time. And the night that she slept with him, we know that that's because she was all worked up about what happened with her and Daemon. She does let him know that, I've made an arrangement. We can still sleep together, but I gotta be queen. Like, there's no way I'm leaving and going to Essos. Like, that's just not happening. And his feelings are hurt, and it starts to, all the dots start to connect, and he's like, so what, you just want me to be your side piece? Like, am I a whore to you? And he storms off. It's hard for me to believe that he really thought he had a shot. I don't know his backstory too much, but I get the sense that he came from nothing and he's worked his way up and he's very proud of himself and he takes his duties seriously. And yes, Rhaenyra did seduce him, come on to him. He did resist in the beginning, but nobody has to know. Nobody ever had to know. So yes, you broke your oath, but this is truly between you and her. She can't admit it to anybody, so it's not like she's going to snitch on you. I don't know if he is just so enamored with her or what, but I can't understand why he would think that that would work. Like, why does he think the heir to the Iron Throne would give all of that up and run away with him? Why does he think that she can run away with him? It's just not realistic. And his reaction to her and then what happened subsequently is very unnerving. And this is where I lost respect for him. And I looked at him in a different way. I thought he was a solid dude before. Um, I did think he was an honorable man, but he turned into, I won't say the word, but and I know I'm not the only one. I think a lot of people are very disappointed in his behavior because he turned everything upside down. And I'm not saying that Rhaenyra was right if she was, because I guess she was using him on some level, but given his state, given his status, in my head, he should have accepted the deal that she was offering him and been happy with it. Now, I know some people will disagree, but this is not a world of flowers and roses where everything's going to pan out well. It just, to me, was very naive and unrealistic of him to think that she could accept such a proposal from him. And on the heels of his rejection, he goes and does the ultimate sucker move. So now Alicent, who's all up in her feelings, she's upset because her father was fired. Then she heard that little bit of news from old boy in the garden, so now she's second guessing. So she calls Sir Criston Cole in to speak to him, and she starts asking him questions. She tells him that there's some rumors out, and some things happened the night that Daemon came back, and she doesn't want to question the princess's virtue, blah blah blah. But she's getting to what. So really, what she's asking him is he aware of anything that may have happened between her and Daemon that night? Now, Criston, who is, we know now, unstable. He's on the heels of rejection. He's guilty. So before she could ask him about Daemon, he confesses to he and Rhaenyra hooking up. This was a real sucker move. Not at all what Alicent expected, but this information changes everything for her. Sir Criston Cole then apologizes to the queen. He asks for forgiveness. All he asks for is a merciful death. He's given up. He believes that this is the end of his life and he seems prepared to take the loss. He's throwing in the towel and it seems like he's ready to die. Now, if there's one thing we can count on as a Game of Thrones House of Dragon fan, is that the wedding is going to be epic, and this one was everything. So the first thing we notice as they're sitting at the banquet table is that the queen, Alicent, is not there. Jason Lannister brings it up. Viserys says she's still getting dressed, and we know she's pissed off. I mean, she's been angry since the beginning. There was a couple of scenes when Viserys had returned from Driftmark and he fell out. She saw that. Later on, when he was sitting with a maester and he was in pain and getting one of his treatments, he asked about her and he said she was nowhere to be found. And now she's not at dinner. So this, we know that she's been sitting in her room stewing, probably thinking about how am I going to handle this? What am I going to do next? And so she's noticeably absent from the banquet initially. But we watch the guests come in, and this is why I love all of this. I mean, it's the pomp and circumstance for me. This is just watching them announce all of the houses, all of the beautiful costumes. It's just such a grand event. I mean, it's just so exciting. And when the Velaryons walk in, it's a whole mood. I mean, the confidence and the beauty and all of it is just so much. We see that the kids are all grown up. We saw Laenor before. We see Laena, who she's a beautiful young woman right now, and they all have the silver hair. I mean, it's just a whole mood. I love everything about it. So they walk in. We see House Hightower walk in, the Lannisters, everybody. It's just setting up to be a beautiful event where all of the noble houses in Westeros are there to celebrate. Then Daemon shows up on some arrogant shit like he does. He walks in, he makes an appearance. Viserys is visibly disturbed by his presence because he had banished him after that whole incident with Rhaenyra last time. And he just walks in all confident as if he, like he had an invitation, as if they were expecting him. And he sits at the dais with the rest of the family. He is confronted by Sir Gerald Royce, who is the uncle of his late wife, Lady Rhea. We'd seen him in the very beginning of the episode, and he believes that Daemon killed her because he knows who Daemon is. He finds it odd that she would die in such a way because she was such a skilled rider and hunter. And he confronts him. He tells him, that men in where he comes from, men have to pay for their crimes, and he knows what happened. And Daemon is so dismissive. First, he asks him who he is, as if he doesn't know. Then he tells him, well, in King's Landing, men will be held responsible for accusations. So he throws a little threat at him. And then to add insult to injury, he tells him that he is going to be coming to the Eyrie next week because he wants to get his land. He said that he and Lady Rhea did not have any heirs, and he is entitled to whatever she was to inherit. So upon her death, he is to acquire all of her land. Daemon just don't know when to stop. And I'm just like everybody else. I love him, and I should not. He is a scoundrel. He's a horrible human being, but there's just something about the way he moves and the way he delivers his lines, and just this, he just doesn't care, like he is just always calm, never under pressure, and just always like two steps ahead of everybody. So we see that there's an enemy. He's made an enemy out of Sir Gerald, and this might come back to bite him later. We're not sure, but we know that Daemon is just racking up enemies. Now that everybody's in attendance, King Viserys stands up and he gives his announcement, or he welcomes everybody to the festivities, and he makes a big to-do about joining the houses Targaryen and Velaryon, and how they all share a history from old Valyria, and this is going to be the second age of the dragons, and setting the stage for a joyous celebratory event. Mid-speech, he gets interrupted by Lady Alicent. So, she wasn't there at the beginning. She makes a huge entrance. And without saying a word, she's making a very strong statement, and it is because of what she is wearing. Green is the color of House Hightower, and when the beacon on Hightower glows green, that means that Old Town is calling its banners to war. So in doing this, it's almost like a dog whistle where she is pledging allegiance to her father's family, and in essence, disassociating herself from the Targaryens, letting her family know that she has chosen sides, and that she no longer has an allegiance to her husband or Rhaenyra. Viserys recognizes it, he sees it, Rhaenyra sees it. So, I mean, she's communicated very well without saying a word. So they're all aware that something's awry. Now, they don't know what happened to get her to this point, but they are aware. And I saw a lot of comments where people are like, well, why is Alicent so upset? Why does she care so much who Rhaenyra is sleeping with? And at first that was my thought, but the more I thought about it, I am starting to understand. And there's a couple of things here. She went out on a limb for Rhaenyra when she told Viserys that, it's unlikely that Rhaenyra would lie about such a thing. She knows that she had her husband's ear. So in doing that, she also led to her father being dismissed. She did choose a side. And based on what she said to Viserys, and then, Viserys had a conversation with Rhaenyra, but I believe that that's what pushed him over the edge, and to believe that Otto was self-interested and he had spies on Rhaenyra, and he was waiting for something or looking for something so that she could be unseated from the throne so that his grandson could step up. So in her siding with her friend, in essence, she contributed to her father getting pushed out. So um, she feels guilty about that. And we saw that in the first scene where she was very sad to see him leave. And, she didn't know it was going to come to this piece, but it did. And now she's essentially alone. We know that she's not completely happy in her marriage. Her relationship with Rhaenyra is, kind of on the rocks. They have their good days, they have their bad days. I believe she still feels isolated and lonely. And so that when you take that and now you compound that with what she learned in the garden, the rumor about the tea, so she knows that something is going on here, and it sounds like Viserys and his daughter are in cahoots, and she's being left out on the sideline, and they're possibly both lying to her, and she feels foolish for being loyal. And then when she learns about Sir Criston Cole's confession, that Rhaenyra is not telling her the whole story. She's lying to her. They're probably not as close as Alicent believes that they are because she couldn't tell her the truth. Rhaenyra is not the girl that she thought she was. And there might be a little tinge of jealousy. Her future was laid out for her by her father. I mean, she was forced to marry this much older man and live this life that she's not completely happy with. And she even had a conversation with Rhaenyra at one point, and she said, it's kind of romantic that you can pick your own suitor. I think she longs for the freedom and mutual love. And I mean, I think she loves Viserys, but she did not have the opportunity to be with a man her age and to select that man and all the other stuff. So, I mean, I think there's some resentment there as well that may not technically be Rhaenyra's fault, but if you package all of this together, you can see why she feels betrayed, and she feels like she's a victim in all of this. I think this was the turning point for her to realize that they're going to take care of their own and that she's pretty much on the outs, and she needs to turn back towards her family. And meaning her family, her father, her uncle who's at the wedding, and the rest of the folks who came from Old Town, but also for her children. Her father did say that if Rhaenyra was challenged, she might have to murder her children. Now that sounds extreme, but now knowing that Rhaenyra is a liar and all these other things, I guess all of this is starting to come to the surface, and she doesn't know what to believe anymore. So I believe she's in protection mode, and she's feeling like she's alone in this, and she has to do what she needs to protect herself and her loved ones. So I think when you package all of this together, this is where all of this anger and resentment is kind of coming to the surface, and it's targeted at her husband and her former friend. So shortly afterwards, the festivities begin, and Laenor and Rhaenyra have a first dance, and they seem to really, they have a mutual understanding, and they seem to enjoy each other, and everything seems to be going well. Criston is in the corner seething, right? His feelings are hurt. He believes he's probably going to be sent to his death for the confession he made to Alicent, and he's still on duty, and he has to do his job right now, but you can tell it's written all over his face how unhappy he is. And it's that expression on his face that lends to the next set of events, because Joffrey, Laenor's boyfriend, he knows that Rhaenyra has somebody else. There's some man in her life, and that's why she's part of the reason she's so open with them having an open marriage. But while all the festivities are happening, he's being observant, and he notices how Sir Criston is looking at Rhaenyra, and he puts two and two together and deduces that she's his lover. He tells this to Laenor, and he says, this is a good thing that we know this, because she knows your secret and now you know her secret, and we're all going to be safe. Where he goes wrong is he goes and he talks to Sir Criston, and he tells him, he starts having a little vague conversation with him, talking about the couple and how nice they look together, and how both of them, both he and Sir Criston, they see it as their role to protect both of them, and pretty much lets him know that, look, I know about the two of y'all, and it's all good, and the four of us have this secret now. We can all do this, do what we want, and live our best life, and acknowledge that they're all in cahoots together. Sir Criston does not like this, because this feels like he is a side piece again, and he's angry that Rhaenyra is talking about it, that well, he believes that she's telling people, and she's referring to him as her side piece, and that's what got him so angry on the ship. The idea that she wants him to be her whore. So he is like, he's already tight, and now he's becoming incensed, and his anger is growing by the moment. Next, we see Daemon goes back to his messy ways, and he goes out onto the dance floor, and he's been watching Rhaenyra the whole night and leering at her. And they go out on the dance floor, and he tells her that, and they're talking to each other in High Valyrian, and he's like, Sir Laenor's a good man, but you don't need to get married. You need to be with me. And she kind of calls his bluff. She's like, well, then that's the case. Take me out of here right now. Take me to Dragonstone and marry me. And there's a lot of tension, a lot of sexual tension between the two of them. And again, Daemon has no chill, because you're doing this on the dance floor in front of all these people. I mean, there's already the rumor that's out there. This does not look like an uncle niece banter. It's just so inappropriate, but he doesn't care. And Viserys is watching him out the corner of his eye, and obviously he can't say anything at the moment. He didn't think Daemon was going to be there. Daemon obviously wasn't invited, but he's watching. He's trying to watch, but he's trying to see through all the crowd of everything that's going on. And he's concerned, like, what's he saying to my daughter? What's he about to do next? Because Daemon is so unpredictable. So we have this thing going on, and there's all this building tension. I mean, you can hear it in the music, and something as bad is about to happen, and you have all these people in the room with beef with each other, and you just don't know where it's going to happen, like how it's going to explode. It will, you just don't know who it is. Is it going to be Daemon and Viserys? Is it going to be Daemon and Sir Gerald? Is it going to be Sir Criston and Daemon, or Sir Criston and Laenor, or Sir Criston and Joffrey? I mean, there's just Alicent is sitting there. She's side-eyeing her husband. He knows that she's pissing. He don't even know why. I mean, there is just tension in every corner of this room, and it's the cinematography and the music and all of it is just building it in such a way that you are like sitting on the edge of your seat the entire time. I mean, we all remember the Red Wedding, and you have this sitting in the back of your head, and you know what Game of Thrones is capable of. So this can go 1,000 different ways, and we have no idea, and we just have to sit here and wait. And sure enough, a fight breaks out. And because there's so many people on the dance floor, you can't see who it is. You just see a whole bunch of there are people screaming, and there's a bunch of movement throughout the crowd, and everybody on the dais is standing up trying to figure out what's happening here. Rhaenyra and Laenor are in the crowd somewhere, and there's all this ruckus. And then we see little shots here and there. We see Sir Criston Cole is fighting with somebody. We see Laenor try to jump in. He gets hit, and then we see him get thrown onto a table. There's just all of this chaos. Viserys is obviously concerned for his daughter. He can't find her. She gets pushed aside. She's a little petite thing, so she's sitting in the corner somewhere. Sir Harwin actually goes out to save her, and he pushes his way through the crowd, beating up people on the way, and he finally finds her, throws her over his shoulder. And then once the crowd starts to disperse a little bit, we see what actually happened, and it is Sir Criston going bananas, and he's beating the dog shit out of Joffrey. I mean, he is pummeling him he literally pummels him to death. He takes his eye out. I mean, you can see that Sir Criston Cole, he's in a state of rage. He doesn't even know what's going on. And at this point, I believe he thinks he has nothing to lose. He believes that he's probably going to be put to death for his relationship with Rhaenyra anyway. And he had been boiling this entire time, and it just came to a head. And unfortunately, Joffrey was at the receiving end of that. When the dust settles, we just see Joffrey's corpse, and it's hard to look at. Laenor is devastated. At the end, he's laying next to Joffrey's dead body. It's just very sad. The party is clearly over, and while all this is happening, King Viserys is bleeding. I don't know if it's his nose bleeding, or I mean, he's having a hard time. And at the very end, we see the actual wedding. Now, this was supposed to be 7 days of tournaments and feasting, but at this point, Viserys is just like, let's just get them married. Let's just go have a quick shotgun wedding here and get this over with, because this shit is falling apart. Both families are still in the ballroom. There's still blood on the ground. The place is a mess, and they are exchanging their vows. Now, I would have thought that Criston would have been dragged away. I mean, everybody saw what he was doing, but he's back out in the garden, and he's ready to kill himself. I mean, he's about to literally throw himself on his sword, and he's about to stab himself when Alicent stops him. I was hoping he was going to do it because I just think he is trouble at this point and he cannot be trusted and he's unpredictable. And clearly now he has an axe to grind with Rhaenyra, and it's only going to get worse. But he doesn't kill himself. Alicent stops him, and if you read the books, you know that he's a character who plays out later. So, and I don't know how closely they're following this. So it doesn't mean that he's gonna be around for a long time. But if they do play it out similar to the books, then I guess it would make sense that he didn't kill himself. But yeah, that was it. It was really, I mean, edge of your seat, and I feel like every week it's just getting better and better. And just once I think like, oh wow, that was amazing. How are they gonna top that? They top it. This was great. Looks like next week we are going to see a huge time jump. The two actresses who play Rhaenyra and Alicent are going to be replaced with other actresses to truly reflect the fact that they've aged. We're going to see Rhaenyra with a bunch of kids, and King Viserys looks horrible. You can see he's really aged. I'm happy to see him in the next episode because he passed out right after the wedding, and I thought this might have been the last time we saw him. So I'm glad to see he's still alive, and probably not much longer, but still, I think he still has some things he needs to do. So next week is going to get really good. I think we're going to kind of jump into a whole new phase. I think I heard them say it had been like 10 years. I'm not sure. But yeah, so it was really good. Just jam-packed with drama and action and all that good stuff. And let me know what you thought. So I will talk to you guys next week. Do not forget to like, share, and subscribe, and you can get a notification once my new video gets uploaded. Talk to you later.